Okay, so you clicked on this video, which means that you played Red Dead Redemption. Okay, so you clicked on this video, which means you played Red Dead Redemption 2, which means you either hate/love the game, which probably means you know who this character is. Dutch Van Der Linde. That's right. The thick mustache, charismatic son of a gun who is the most interesting and disturbing, leaving quite an impression on almost every single one who's played Red Dead 2.
Not go backward, but go forward. With hope and dreams. And that hope begins now. By being hopeful and happy.
And today we're gonna digress a little bit from what we usually do, which is talking about games, and instead we're gonna talk about one character in a video game. I'm sure you noticed that Dutch Van Der Linde, the gang's leader, makes quite a few speeches during the game, including in the beginning.
So all of you, keep busy and stay out of the worst of trouble out there.
More in the beginning.
I don't quite get it.
You will, son. You will.
In the middle.
We still need money.
And at the end.
You have got to keep faith.
Then he finally shuts the fuck up for good. But the most interesting about these speeches is his ideology or philosophy, or at least what he's pretending to say. I still remember the first time playing this game, trying to figure out the right beard size and whether or not I should put on my sexy winter jacket, and hearing Dutch give one of his world famous speeches and going like, what the actual fuck is he talking about? So without any further ado, let's dive deep into Molly's vajayjay and figure out why Dutch Van Der Linde has a small cock. Dutch is by no means an ordinary character, and you get to explore that quite a bit when you're playing Red Dead 2. How he changes, his character arc, his well-written lines, and generally how complex he is. The first logical step, of course, is him as a person. If his speeches are anything to go by,
to carve a country from man's desire and not some old world juju. Wasn't that a beautiful fantasia, Arthur?
Such sad, very emotion, much dark, many profound.
Then Dutch Van Der Linde is an ideologist who believes in the utopian version of the world. What he considers utopia isn't necessarily the same as for the rest of us, but there are some great things he values and tries to protect, like honesty, equality, a better lifestyle, and
goddamn plan!
The important thing here is that Smarty Pants Dutch recognizes that he can't change the world and the odds are pretty much nil, so his approach is to gather the right people who more or less share the same ideas or want the same things to then have a self-sustained community of people who live in their version of paradise. And this is where the rest of the gang come in. There's a reason for the existence of every single member in Dutch's gang. I mean, after all, they wouldn't really join if there was nothing offered to them. The alcohol gambling addicted priest Reverend got to keep his healthy lifestyle, and Addie got a chance of being a baddie by almost feeling kinda equal to men, which pretty much didn't exist back in those days. Well, you get the picture. In essence, Dutch hates the modern world. He isn't cut out for it, and he knows it perfectly well. His life choices didn't exactly make him a college professor, but with a group of dedicated people, he can live however the f he wants.
I guess that I am just some tired old Yankee dreamer in a world I no longer understand. That's so. I am starting to think so. I am starting to fear so.
In total fairness though, his criticisms are absolutely valid. We should all feel equal, we should all be free, we shouldn't obliterate the environment. But his answers to these problems just create even bigger problems. What Dutch says and does at the best of times is,
"Oh, look at what this society is turning into. Arthur, this pen sucks. It sometimes leaks ink. We can't make everyone not use it, but we can create a community where we all use coal."
Okay, Dutch, but look, my hand is now dirty with coal.
Exactly as I planned.
And at the worst of times, he just straight up becomes delusional.
Who amongst you is with me? And who is betraying me?
Anyway, this all becomes much more clear once you get to the uprising in Guama. A perfect example of, oh, this is so wrong, let's change it. But notice the difference. They are slaves who want freedom, and Dutch's gang who also want freedom. A shared utopian ideology practiced to absolute shit. Speaking of shit, aside from Dutch's manipulation, justification, half-assed philosophy, dishonesty and deception, desperation using others' desperation, forced leadership, and I got this, religion and cult-like approach, there is one very intriguing thing. Mr. Miller. Yes, the same Mr. Miller who wrote the books Dutch reads and recites all the time. And apparently there's a mission which enables you to pay him a little visit much later in the game, where he admits that he didn't entirely know what he was talking about when he wrote those books.
Terrible fraud, sir. Your friend was deceived. I am God's blithe plaything, and what a feeble game he has begun in me.
My mentor never saw things quite like that.
You know, I used to write in a study and teach at a university. I taught some Connecticut fops how best to appreciate their topiary. I was a gilded ape. I loathe the man I was, the man I am.
He's a troubled character, to say the least. Some say he's based on Henry David Thoreau, a novelist in the 19th century. They do have resemblance both in their writing and appearance, but I'll leave that up to you. You can get to know Mr. Miller a little bit better through his books. In his book An American Eden, he writes, "The real America can only be found not in desires but in the purity of its landscape. Here in this landscape so perfectly cherished by our native cousins, we, they, and all those who value it are free to worship at God's truest
Altar.
The altar of the actual America. The soil, rock, and trees make this vast and perfect place so perfect, yet we bespoil it with European delusions. The delusions that we can compete with God, that our built environment can transcend His, that our factories and all the squalid conditions that arise in the town in which they are built will somehow allow us to be happy. We are not fools, for fools cannot see their idiocy." You can clearly see where Dutch's views of a simple way of life and the hatred of the modern world really come from. And Mr. Miller continues, "We are somehow worse than fools, for we will ourselves to do things of such profound stupidity despite knowing that we hate what we have built. Who likes a factory? Which man's soul was ever lifted by a tenement building? Who enjoys seeing working men reduced to wretches and their wives and children treated not as cherished members of a family, but as an awful burden? We need better, and your better is all around. Better is America. Let's go. Again, you can see where his reasoning kind of fall apart. And I know guaranteed that there's gonna be someone down in the comments typing a f***ing essay defending this. To which I say, please do. Always happy to not give a f***. Because guess what? That's not the point of the video. But that's not all. Oh no, there's more. In his book, The American Inferno, he tries to justify and put a little bit of weight to his naturalist approach, focusing more on the human God side of things. Our humanity can only be understood if we embrace both the animal and the God within us. As humans, we must nourish both. Yet America is a land of action, a place fixated not on ideas,
not on the redemptive power of thought,
but on the obliteration of the intellect. It is a place wherein mankind has attempted to deny half of his being, and in pursuing freedom has attempted to split himself. Much as a monk gives up the pleasures of the body, so the American is encouraged to give up the pleasures of the mind. Men are fixated on greed, on desire, and on the acquisition not of experiences or pleasures, but the ability to acquire. People are fixated on wealth. Men is reduced to the desire for desire. Wanting is all that matters. Not loving, not being, not having, but wanting. We are killers for desire. Even sport would be preferable. This is the grand sickness, the eternal sickness of this land. It is man unleashed and turned into he knows not what. So when Dutch speaks of God and how things should be normal and natural, this is what he means. Though again, you see his logic turning on itself. But this paragraph is probably the one that's written best, since it has a very clear and fair point. As I traveled through Manhattan, from the migrant slums of the Lower East Side to the marble-clad mansions by the Central Park, I came to appreciate a hideous truth. The system that allows poverty and degradation, such as I saw, is wrong. And the impacts of the degradation on humanity are profound. But far worse is the impact of wealth upon those who possess it and are possessed by it. Honestly, it's quite impressive that the developers went to such an extent. I mean, the inclusion of Mr. Miller is just mainly to give Dutch more depth. Not just creating a simple villain with some ideas, but more importantly, a human being. Someone who's susceptible, who is still trying to figure things out, and who is deeply flawed. All in all, I think Dutch Van Der Linde is one hell of a character, and I wish to see more detailed characters like him in the future. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and thank you for sticking around till the end of the video. See you in the next one.